Some time ago, I brought to the channel a video showing all the differences between the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 versions of GTA 5. However, besides a few points not being very clear in that video, many comments pointed out way more differences between the first-gen GTA 5 and the newer generations that came out later. That said, I decided to redo this video, fixing all the issues from the previous one and adding a lot more info, basically doubling the number of differences pointed out. Because of that, the earlier version might be set to private or unlisted. Now that the reason for a basically similar video I released a while back is well explained, let's get started. GTA 5 originally launched on September 17, 2013 for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Later on, the next year, a new version came out in 2014 for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, featuring updated graphics and a bunch of extra stuff. The point of this video is to show the crazy amount of differences between the PlayStation 3 version and the PlayStation 4 version that you probably never noticed, because when we start playing the new version, we tend to forget the old one. And just a quick note, whenever I mention PlayStation 3, I'm also talking about Xbox 360, and whenever I say PlayStation 4, I'm including Xbox One and the consoles that came after. Also, just to be clear, the goal of this video isn't to compare graphics. I'll touch on graphics a bit, but that's not the main focus here. The first difference we have, which I believe everyone noticed right away, is the graphics. But before diving into this first topic, I want to make it clear that all the footage from the PlayStation 3 version was recorded using an emulator. I could have just gone online and grabbed old clips of people playing on the PlayStation 3, but I think it's way better to show what I found and recorded myself. And when comparing the graphics, I kept the emulator version as close to the original as possible. First off, there was an improvement in resolution. The base GTA 5 on PlayStation 3 ran at 720p. Besides the resolution boost, we also got improvements in shadows, vegetation, draw distance, and more. Here on the PlayStation 4 version, the graphics and detail got a huge upgrade. And just to remind you again, the goal of this video isn't a graphics comparison, but to show all the differences between the generations. Shadows also improved a lot, and the vegetation actually got thicker, but it's not exactly like what we'd hoped for, like the vegetation shown in the game trailers. Still, there's a noticeable upgrade in all the vegetation. They added bushes, grass, trees, and so on. Besides that, there's also an improvement in draw distance, because when you look far away, at least on the PlayStation 3 version, everything is super low res or almost impossible to see. But when you're playing on the PlayStation 4 version, you can see a bit farther and with way more detail. Also on the new generation, unlike the PlayStation 3 version, you get way more car traffic. The number of vehicles driving around on the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360 is pretty limited, so you'll see heavier traffic in the newer generation from PlayStation 4 onwards, along with a higher density of NPCs and vehicles. That's because these new consoles have more processing power, more memory, and stuff like that, things the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 hardware just couldn't handle back then. When we jump into the game, like right after opening it and all, we notice some differences between the old generation and the new one. The first thing that's really important to point out, in the old generation, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, the loading was way faster because the game was smaller. I don't remember exactly how long the loading took back when I had my Xbox 360, but I think it was somewhere between 45 seconds and 1 minute. Now, in the new generation, sometimes it can take up to 4 minutes on the PlayStation 4. That's right, I've actually waited 4 minutes for GTA 5 to load on my PlayStation 4. It was super slow, and that's because the files are way heavier, like those graphics and shadow files I just mentioned. But on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, the storage system is still the same, which is an HDD. SSDs only came stock with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series generation. Also on the old generation, scene transitions from one character to another, from one wallpaper to the next, have a fade out and fade in. The fade out darkens the screen and then the new wallpaper appears, but on the new generation, instead of fading out and in, the wallpaper simply slides to the side. Obviously, all the artworks that show up on the loading screen on the new generation are in high resolution. On the old generation, they're in 720p, while on the new generation, it's full HD. And there's one really subtle detail. Lester's shirt in the old generation artwork was red, something I had never noticed before, but on the new generation loading screens, he switched to a green plaid shirt, which I think is one he actually wears in the game. I don't know why they made that change, but anyway, there are some other changes you'll see later that don't make much sense either, but let's keep going. When we jump into the game, I think the biggest difference I noticed right away, a crazy difference, was in the cell phones. For example, Michael's phone in the old generation had a 2D model with really poor rendering. Actually, all the phones in the old generation had terrible rendering, but that's not a complaint about the game, it's just a hardware limitation from back then. But besides the rendering issue, the design was sometimes simpler too. Michael's phone had physical buttons, for example, 2 buttons on the left side and 1 button on the right, and on the front of the screen there was a power button right next to the iFruit logo. It looked a lot like an iPhone 4. On On the new generation, it's completely clean, way more like an iPhone 5, which is much more clean. Now, Franklin's phone is probably the worst rendered one. You can see from far away that it looks like paper. It's all white and gray in the old generation with one button on the right side, but in the new generation, it's a black phone with a green border all around, way better rendering, and two buttons on the left side. Up top, it now shows the phone's brand name. In the old generation, Franklin's phone didn't have any branding. Now, Trevor's phone has a pretty cool difference too. Even though it's poorly rendered in the old gen, I don't think there's that much of a graphical difference between versions. The biggest change here is that Trevor's phone in the first gen was rounded at the top with red icon, and in the new gen, it's completely straight edge. A square phone that's way better rendered with slightly different icon. Also, in the new gen, there's a crack on Trevor's phone screen that wasn't there in the old gen. Actually, this crack is pretty noticeable if you switch to first person. I thought it was a nice little detail because it kind of fits Trevor's personality as a whatever kind of guy, you know? But overall, for all the phones, they all have improved resolution and a slight change in icon size. The phone themes for all of them also changed the color of everything. Back in the day, changing the theme only changed the text color, but now it changes the entire layout. Also, just to wrap up, the cameras got a little tweak inside the game. They removed the distortion filter that was in the old generation, and in the new generations, they added actions you can do with the characters when taking photos, like flipping the bird, posing for the camera, and so on. Besides the removed filter and the new actions, the old generation's camera had grid lines on the screen that couldn't be turned off in version 1.00 of the game. After some updates, it became possible to remove the grid by pressing R1, and that stayed the same in the new generation. The image quality of the camera in the old generation was also lower. I believe this wasn't a hardware issue but something intentional by the developers, which didn't make much sense in the end and was removed when they moved to the newer generation. In the pause menu, there's also a pretty big difference. In the old generation, the map was fully colored, showing urban areas in gray, forest areas in green, and a sort of desert or arid area, I'm not sure what the exact term is, in light brown. The entire beach area was also in that light brown color. Now in the new generation, the map is completely black, the icons got a slight redesign, and overall they became more minimalist. Some were changed to make it look cleaner in the end. Also, only in the new generation was the personal vehicle icon added, which isn't a new icon. It's the same one that was already in the police impound lot. Now moving away from the map and onto the minimap, it's a subtle difference, but you can notice it as soon as you jump into the game. The first thing is that in the old generation, the map had black borders. It was more transparent and smaller. You can even see it was positioned further away from the corner of the screen. In the new generation, those black borders were removed. The map is a bit bigger, less transparent, making it more visible. And the icons, like for people and targets, also have a lighter black border with a more minimalist vibe. In the old generation, the black border around a target on the minimap was really thick. Now in the new one, it's way more subtle, showing Rockstar was aiming to keep things cleaner overall. Alright, now talking about missions. On the failure screen back in the old gen, when you failed, a simple fail message would show up right in the middle of the screen, and after the fail cutscene or something like that, the screen would just go black with the word failed, but not during the cutscene. In the new gen, during the cutscene itself, the failed mission screen already appears. It shows a black and white screen with a banner behind the name where it says you failed the mission. And unlike the old gen, this time there's an explanation right below about what you did wrong, if you scared the family, if you killed someone, or whatever it was. On the old gen, it took a few seconds for the reason to show up on screen. Now moving on to the success or mission complete screen, when you finish a mission, it would show as completed on the screen along with your mission score, like your rating of mistakes and hits, gold, silver, etc. But on the new generation, there's now a banner behind the mission complete text. This same banner was added to the fail screen, the death screen, and so on. It's always the same banner. Also, the menu that shows your mission score is hidden this time on the new generation. You have to press the PlayStation Square or Xbox X button to open those mission stats and check your score. The death screen, just like the failure screen, also had some differences. On the old generation, it was a simple black and white background with the word died on the screen, or sometimes it even said you fucked up. On the new generation, the background is black, darker, following the same style, but a detail that few people noticed is that at the moment each character dies, whether it's Trevor, Franklin, or Michael, you can see the character's color first, followed by the black. Also, the design changes a bit from the old generation to the new one, becoming very similar to that failure screen, with the black and white filter, the black bar, and so on. And the sound when you die with the character also has a slight change. On the old generation it sounded simple, but on the new generation it feels like a longer, more intense version, though it seems to be the same sound, just modified. So I don't know why Rockstar decided to change that. Now let's talk about cheat codes in GTA 5. One of the new features added in this generation is the ability to enter cheats using the cell phone. In the previous generation, you could only enter cheats by pressing buttons like square, triangle, up, down, and so on. But in this generation, they brought back something from GTA 4, which was entering codes on your phone. However, unlike GTA 4, you can't save these codes, but you can enter them as many times as you want. The codes are usually long. I personally have trouble memorizing them, but it's pretty useful to do the cheats on the phone, especially the invincibility cheat, where the last button is triangle on consoles, because when you do it in vehicles, you get kicked out, which was super annoying for me, especially in air vehicles. Besides this new feature added, there were two changes to existing GTA 5 cheats. The first change is in a cheat that affects car drift. On the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, when you activated this cheat, you could drive the vehicle while it drifted more easily on the track, making the game less arcade and more like a drift simulator. Starting with the PlayStation 4 version, when you activate this cheat, it's impossible to drive the vehicle. When you accelerate, the car basically drifts non-stop and struggles to gain speed, and once it does, the turns become impossible to complete, making this cheat unusable. The second altered code was the Super Jump code, which in the PlayStation 3 version of GTA 5 when activated, lets you control the character's direction while jumping. This ability to control the character was removed in later versions, so when you jump forward or sideways, you can't change direction mid-air anymore. Now moving away from cheat codes, let's talk about the second feature that was also added in the new generation but wasn't in the old one. That was the first-person camera. This first-person camera completely changes the gameplay dynamic. And of course, with this first-person view, a bunch of weapon animations and other shooting stuff were redone to make it a bit more realistic and fitting for this camera. We'll go deeper into vehicle interiors in first person. The car interiors were basically all redone because with the character inside the car, the view couldn't stay like it was on the PlayStation 3, where the interiors were extremely poorly detailed and simple. Now you can see everything clearly. But it's not all sunshine. One of the losses that came with remodeling the vehicle interiors was the red interior color on the Infernus. In the old generation, it was red inside, but after the remodel, it's all black. I don't know if any other car had the same interior change. If so, comment below. Another difference between the old-gen GTA 5 and the PlayStation 4 version onward is that before, characters would answer the phone by putting it up to their ear to listen and respond. However, from the PlayStation 4 version forward, the phone is held in front of the character's face with speakerphone on. I believe this animation was added so the phone is visible in first person inside cars, and because of that, the old animation of holding the phone next to the ear was removed. Another change that first-person camera brought to vehicles is the reduced car deformation. In the first version of the game, you could deform vehicles a lot more. In some cases, almost completely crumpling the car, or even when you hit a front wheel, depending on the angle, there was a chance the wheel would come off in the old generation. It seems like the game's physics were tweaked a bit when it moved to the new generation because that doesn't happen anymore. You can still hit the vehicle and damage a specific wheel, but it's almost impossible to actually make that wheel come off. Usually you can just lock it so it won't spin anymore. So there was a downgrade in vehicle damage from the first generation to the next. Since the deformation of vehicles was drastically reduced, I believe this is due to the first-person camera, which would require more detailed interiors for severe damage on cars, especially vehicles with cabins like military truck. To save effort, they reduced the damage and increased the standard armor on vehicles. Personally speaking, this was a downside, especially considering how much GTA 5 makes financially for Rockstar. I think they could have allocated budget for the developers to do that work. Another change we had with cars was the addition of the wheelie feature. On the PlayStation 3, there are powerful vehicles that even have the option to add wheelie bars at Los Santos Custom. One example of this type of car is the Sabre Turbo, but even after adding this accessory and all kinds of modifications on the PlayStation 3 version, these cars don't do wheelies. On the PlayStation 4 version and onward, you just need to grab a car from this category, hold the gas and pull the handbrake at the same time, which on the PlayStation 4 means holding R2 and R1 simultaneously, and when you release the handbrake, the car will pop a wheelie for a few meters. If you upgrade the car's performance, the wheelie will be higher and last much longer. The wheelie bar isn't necessary to do a wheelie, it's just decorative, and honestly, from my point of view, it even gets in the way a bit. Now talking about cars added in the new generation. In the first generation of GTA 5, we had a much more limited number of cars right when the game first launched, and as DLCs were released, all those GTA Online vehicle DLCs started bringing cars into story mode. When you start the new generation GTA, meaning GTA on PlayStation 4 and onward, all those vehicles that came through updates for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 are already available by default in the stores for you to buy. Besides that, all the cars that came via updates back in the PlayStation 3 days were available for free in purchased garages and could be selected from a list, but this was removed in later versions since all vehicles moved to the website stores. Also, 3 new cars from GTA 4 were added, which are the Dinka Blista Compact that even has a special paint job, I'll talk about that later, the De Classy Stallion, and the Imponte Juke. In GTA 5 overall, there are more vehicles that came from GTA 4, but the ones I noticed added from the PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 version were just these 3, though there might be more. Besides that, the Juco Death vehicle was added, which is available through a random event, the Dodo Plane also through a random event, and the Kraken Submarine, which you have to unlock by collecting items. Still talking about cars, but this time about vehicle customization, they added neon lights under the cars as a customizable option at Los Santos Customs for all vehicles in the game, which wasn't in the previous generation. Also, the darkest tint for car windows, which was completely black, was removed. I'm not exactly sure why. According to some internet theories, it was removed because of the first-person camera, with the reasoning that with that window tint, players wouldn't be able to see outside the car. Talking about radio songs, from what I researched and understood, 168 new tracks from various genres were added across several stations. I can't go into detail about every single song that got added, but yeah, there were a bunch of new songs, and obviously I can't play them here due to copyright issues. Moving away a bit from cars and onto purchasable properties, we can see there was also a difference with the garages. In the old generation, there wasn't even an entry or exit animation. For example, in Franklin's garage, you'd enter through the front gate and still exit through the side door with no animation at all. The screen just faded to black, and when it came back, you were either inside or outside. And in Franklin's garage, there was even a glitch where if you exited through the side door, you'd reappear at the front gate, which made no sense. So maybe keeping that in mind, Rockstar decided to fix it when they re-released GTA 5 on the new generation of consoles. In the new generation, we now have animations when entering and exiting each garage, whether it's with Franklin, Trevor, or Michael. The front gate is basically functional. In Franklin's garage, that side door which used to make you spawn at the front gate no longer works. Now when you leave Franklin's garage, you exit through the same gate you entered. It's a pretty cool detail that got fixed because that door inside Franklin's garage, which leads to the side, when you go check outside, you see there's nothing there. Basically, it was a game glitch, and I have no idea why it was even there in the first generation. Going back to cars, but this time police cars. There's a difference here with the police vehicle. Actually, in one police car, in the old generation, the Buffalo didn't have a grille on the front bumper. It had the word police written big on the side door, and on the hood, there was a police emblem. But for some reason, in the new generation, this Buffalo was completely redesigned. Now it has a grille on the front bumper to make it look more rugged. On the side, instead of having the word police, it now has a city sticker with the phrase obey and survive, plus a number below it. On the hood, the police emblem was removed. On the roof of the vehicle, the number 43 was added below the light bar, and several new stickers were added to the back of the car. Another detail is that looking at both vehicles from the front, you notice that police cars in the old generation didn't have a visible police radio above the dashboard, but in the new generation you can clearly see the radio inside the car. This radio detail applies to all police vehicles, from the simplest ones to the rarest police cars, a pretty cool touch. Still talking about the police, there are two interesting details. The first is that in the old generation, the police would chase you basically anywhere, from the city and highways to even mountain trails. So even if you were running through the mountainous areas of the game, police vehicles would spawn to try and catch you. In the new generation, that doesn't happen anymore, and when you head to the mountains, you can easily lose the cops. The worst that can happen is a helicopter chasing you, and if you take that helicopter down, it's pretty much a guaranteed escape. And one last thing about police cars is that police vehicles used to spawn more frequently on the sides of highways. While cruising on the highways in PlayStation 3, it was common to see highway patrol motorcycles and cars parked on the roadside, waiting for some troublemaker to pass by. This was heavily nerfed and is now almost impossible to see in the new generations. Now talking about Easter eggs, there was a change from a face on Mount Chiliad to a chicken. Actually, it doesn't really look like a chicken, but whatever. In the old generation, when you came to this part of the map, you could see a face, and that face looked a lot like a character from the Breaking Bad series. In the new generation, that face was replaced by what's supposed to be a chicken. Actually, it's a parody of a chicken or whatever that thing is. Besides that Easter egg, there was also another one that got removed, which was a grave near a mountain. That grave, from what it seemed, was actually just a mistake. It was kind of a tombstone out in the bushes, pretty close to Fort Zancudo, and in the new generation it was completely removed with no explanation at all, which makes me think it was basically a glitch the developers took out when they remastered the game. And a third thing that was changed in the new generation was an American flag at the Lost Camp. There was a specific trailer in the Lost Camp that originally had a Confederate flag in the PlayStation 3 version. In the last PlayStation 3 version, it didn't have any flag, but in the new generation, they put an American flag in that exact same spot. There was also a difference in the sights and reticle indicators from the old generation to the new one. In the old generation, the sight had a thicker black border and would turn into an X every time you took out an enemy. In the new generation, it basically is an X by default, but with a dot in the middle, and it's way more minimalistic. realistic with a black outline that's almost invisible, while in the old generation it was much more noticeable. The weapon and stats menus also went through some changes. For example, weapon icons were altered, they got a bit bigger and less shiny, and some icons were actually swapped out, like the sticky bomb one, which I think might be the biggest difference from the old generation to the new, but I'm not going to get into all the details or talk about every single icon that changed. Just to be clear, yeah, there were a lot of differences. Still talking about weapons, inside the vehicle we also had some difference. On the old generation, when switching weapons, you could see an outline around the weapon. That outline matched the color of the character you were using at the time, so if you were playing as Franklin it would be green, with Michael it was blue, and so on. On the new generation, this part was redesigned. When you switch weapons now, we no longer have that colored border around the weapon. There's a bigger circle, and the weapon icon is actually a bit smaller compared to the circle, because the circle got bigger. The outline around the weapon was completely removed. Every time you switch weapons, you don't see that outline anymore. But for some reason, the same outline still shows up when you switch the radio, so I didn't really get the point of this change. Still talking about weapons, but now outside the car, there's also a small difference. The weapon menu looks smaller on the old generation. At least that's the impression I get, and it has a lighter gray, almost leaning toward white. On the new generation, when you open the weapon menu, the background is completely blurred. Also, there's a subtle stats menu in the top right corner, which we did have on the old generation too, but it wasn't positioned that high or that far to the right. It was a little more to the left and a bit lower. There were also some weapons added in the new generation. When you play on PlayStation 4 and up, you get the railgun, which is basically an electric cannon, the hatchet, a heavy sniper rifle, a proximity mine that actually showed up on the PlayStation 3 after some updates, and a broken bottle you can use to poke people on the street. There might be other weapons added, but from what I researched and can remember off the top of my head, I think that's about it. Also, in the new generation, we got some random events and side missions added, so I'll break it down for you. In random events, there's the one that unlocks the dodo plane, which happens right around this part of the map. In this event, you have to take out some gangsters and steal the plane. After you steal it, just store it in your hangar and it's yours. There's also the Mad Max car random event, which you unlock around this part of the map after a crazy chase, and there's a random event that's tied to a collectible. This collectible gives Trevor dresses and t-shirts, plus it unlocks an exclusive themed car. Besides those 3 random events I mentioned, a new mystery was added that can only be solved with Michael. This mystery, if I'm not mistaken, has 6 steps, I don't remember exactly, but in the end, you get 2 new filters for the game. Also, at a certain point in the mission, you get access to Solomon Richards' office to explore freely, which is pretty cool. To add on, there were also new side missions introduced starting with the PlayStation 4 version, like the stock car race. In these races, the cars have unique paint jobs, and every time you win, you get that specific vehicle as a special car, which is sent straight to your purchased garage. You can win up to 5 vehicles, with the last one being the Marshall, aka the famous monster truck. Plus, you can also get a car just like Franklin's with a special paint job. We also got new collectibles added from the PlayStation 3 version to the PlayStation 4. They added 27 peyotes. These peyotes are those fruits the character eats around the map, and then he can transform into a random animal. Besides those 27 peyotes, for those who already collected all of them, they also added the Bigfoot peyote, which after collecting the 27 peyotes and completing some specific tasks, you can also turn into Bigfoot. I personally really like this one, but it takes a lot of work. Besides the peyote and Bigfoot collectibles, you also have the collectible of monkey photos or monkey graffiti. This collectible basically unlocks the random event, and this random event tied to the monkey graffiti collectible is what unlocks the Blistagogo monkey car, along with exclusive dresses and t-shirts for Trevor. And the last collectible added was the animal photography collectible, which didn't exist in the old generation. It was also added in the new one, and after you complete the animal photography collectible, you unlock a new vehicle, which is the Kraken submarine, that wasn't available in the first version of GTA 5 on PlayStation 3. We also had animals added, cats were added, dogs were already there, but new breeds were introduced. At Trevor's house, cockroaches were added which weren't in the first generation. Besides that, throughout the game, rabbits, pigeons, dolphins, whales, and stingrays were added, and I think stingrays might be the biggest difference in the ocean between the old generation and the new one. Now, talking a bit about the map and some specific things about the environment. In the old generation, there was a scientist camp in the desert. Actually, it's not really a camp, it's an area with several giant satellite dishes, which is also one of the locations for the Doomsday heist in GTA Online. For some reason, this place had a difference between the old generation and the new one. When we got to this spot on the map at 10:40 AM, we'd see scientists accompanied by agents from FIB, or sometimes just the FIB agents. There were 2 vehicles there, a D-Class Granger and a Bravado Buffalo from FIB, which was a super rare FIB car. It had a siren and everything, and it was completely black. This is the vehicle Steve Haynes is driving at the end of the mission, Lamar Down, briefly seen in the cutscene. In the new generation, now we only have scientists in the same location. For some reason, the FIB characters were removed, and even the vehicles were replaced. What used to be FIB vehicles, the Buffalo and the D-Class Granger, are now a white minivan and a white burrito, much more of a scientific vibe than a police. Still talking about some environmental differences, in the old generation we had some fences at the airport that could be destroyed with explosives. Actually, not just some, all the fences at the airport. They could be blown up with RPGs, grenades, etc. In the new generation, for some reason, these fences are now indestructible. You could come here with a tank and it wouldn't make any difference. The entrance to the tunnel in the mission Daddy's Little Girl also got some changes. On the PlayStation 3, when you entered that tunnel, there wasn't much to see, but on the new generation, they added a big Vagos graffiti on the left side right at the entrance. I suspect other spots might have gotten the same kind of detail spread around the map. They also added an abandoned mine in a desert area of the map. This abandoned mine even has an entrance door in the old generation, but the inside was only created for the new generations and is tied to the mystery added for Michael to solve. So now when you get to this spot, you can blow the door open and go inside, something that wasn't possible on the PlayStation 3 version. Going back to the airport, you could see planes taking off and landing all the time. It happened way more often than in the current version. You can even find some YouTube videos of people putting cars on the runway and waiting for the plane to land right on top of them. But in the new generation, that doesn't happen. You might sometimes see that big plane landing or already sitting in the middle of the runway, but usually you don't see it taking off at all. In other words, there was a spawn reduction, just like what happened with police vehicles on the side of the road. And since we're talking about vehicle spawns, another change was the types of vehicles spawning in certain areas. In places like Paleto Bay, you could see a variety of cargo trucks in the old generation. There were way more truck models and types of loads spawning not just in Paleto Bay, but also on the highways near industrial areas. This still happens in the new generation, but it's more limited, and overall you see more cars instead. Besides the graphical differences we already have, like shadows, vegetation, etc., there's also a difference in the graphic filters. Let me give you an example. In the old generation, the filters were more intense and noticeable, like in Trevor's kill mission. The filter was super orange, especially when Trevor activated his special ability. The drunk or high filters were also way stronger. If you, for example, with Michael, go to Jimmy's room and use the bong he has there in his room on both old and new generation, you'll see that in the old generation, the filter was way more intense, almost like that mission Did Somebody Say Yoga after Michael gets high from Jimmy. In the new generation, all of that was toned down a bit, maybe to be more realistic, or maybe Rockstar just wanted to make those filters less intense. The saturation reduction wasn't just in the filters, but throughout the game in general. On the old generation, the colors were more vivid. The grass was a stronger green, the reds were more intense, and so on. Sandy Shore's Desert had a strong orange tint. Colors used to really pop. In the new generation, that was toned down, making everything less saturated. A lot of people didn't like the change, but from my point of view, it was the right call because in real life, colors aren't that bright or manipulated, so lowering the saturation actually makes sense. Another change was the visibility inside store windows. On PlayStation 3, it wasn't easy to see through the glass. You could barely make out the interiors of many places. On the new generation, you can see inside much more clearly. It's way more visible, less hidden, and more noticeable. Honestly, it doesn't affect gameplay at all, but it's an interesting little detail. Talking about clothes and outfits, the news cops were changed. On the old gen, those news cops have a slightly different outfit compared to the new one. The difference can be pretty subtle, but yeah, the biggest change is actually their glass. On the old gen, the glasses covered their faces along with the hood, but now the glasses are on the helmet or hood, and you can see their eyes. It's pretty easy to notice this in the mission, the wrap-up. And I think when it comes to clothes and outfits, the biggest difference of them all is in the prologue mission. After the prologue mission, during Michael's funeral, we can see Agent Dave Norton in the old generation, which is PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Agent Dave Norton was wearing glasses and had his hair slicked back, kind of like an old school movie vibe maybe, or something like that. But in the new generation, he's now without those glasses and wearing a beanie with a more modern look. Another change that also happened in missions was in the mission Reuniting the Family. When Michael goes to tattoo Laszlo's back or chest, that animation where you control the analog stick used to last longer. I noticed this because every time I played that mission on newer versions, it felt way too fast. And somewhere in my memory, I was sure that part of the mission was slower. So using the emulator, I was able to confirm and be certain that this part was sped up in every version after PlayStation 3. At the end of the Merryweather Heist cargo plane version, there was also a slight change that I believe is actually a mistake. In the final cutscene, you could see a taxi arriving before Lester showed up, and it's reasonable to assume that taxi was bringing Lester to the spot. However, in the new generation, the taxi no longer appears. Only Lester shows up out of nowhere sometime later. Rockstar not only added stuff when migrating between generations, but they also removed some features. For example, a change they made to Trevor's special ability. As we already know, when Trevor activates his ability, he becomes invincible, and many players on the old generation used this skill when falling from high places to avoid fall damage. However, on the new generation, when the character jumps, Trevor's special ability is disabled and it's impossible to reactivate it in midair during a fall. Another feature that was removed is the ability to change clothes during missions. For some reason, this was possible in the old generation, meaning that even during a mission, you could go to your house, open the closet, and change outfits. Now, the option to interact with the closet isn't available during missions. Speaking of bombs and explosions, there were also changes in how vehicles blow up. In the old generation, if several cars were close together and you blew up one of them, all the others would explode instantly. In the new generation, when a vehicle explodes near another one, the other vehicle doesn't explode right away. It first starts to catch fire for a few seconds and then blows up. I believe this was done to reduce the amount of hardware used during explosions, making traffic explosions happen sequentially and lowering overall hardware usage. Now, talking about websites, basically all the usable sites from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 have undergone changes. Some, even on the PlayStation 3 version itself, were updated as new DLCs were released. I can't list every single site here, but you can be sure that yes, all the sites like Legendary Motorsport, San Andreas Super Autos, Elitist Travel, etc., all those sites were redesigned. Not all of them, just the most used ones maybe. And like I mentioned, many of them were redesigned right on the PlayStation 3 as the DLCs came out. Some were already being updated. It's nothing drastic, but yeah, there's definitely a difference in the layout. And I think the biggest addition that brought insane freedom to players on the new generation were two things: Director Mode and the Rockstar Editor, which aren't available on the first generation, but starting with the PlayStation 4 version, you can already enjoy them. In Director Mode, you basically get a kind of mod menu, a bit more limited, where you can become an NPC from the story, transform into animals, play with altered weather, set the time you want, however you want, doing all kinds of highly customizable stuff through this Director Mode. Also, you've got the Rockstar Editor, which was added alongside it. With the Rockstar Editor, you can create scenes that you normally wouldn't be able to in regular mode. You can record your gameplay straight from GTA itself by launching the Rockstar Editor. Then, you can edit the footage, changing the camera angles, dynamic speed, depth of field, and a bunch of other stuff, which allowed people, once they got access to this tool, to recreate trailers like the Forza Horizon trailer and many other things that would basically be impossible without having that game on your computer with tons of mods installed. So the Director Mode and Rockstar Editor definitely changed the game for anyone playing on the new generation. Just like a lot of people don't notice these differences, many never catch the little details that are really important for the story. For example, you probably didn't realize the crazy amount of changes Rockstar makes to the map throughout the main story, changes that 99% of players never notice. If you want to get what I'm talking about, click right here next to the arrow to check out this amazing video that will blow your mind. And that's it, folks. This video ends here, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch you later.